ad for a Spider-Man reboot. Now, I did a bigger video where I talk more about it, but this is basically beginning of end of the very first movie with actual details in it. So basically, the movie starts off with Spider-Man web slinging, and he sees a guy, he sees a guy with a crowbar, breaking a door down. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So what he does, he goes and he grabs the guy, and then the guy gets locked up. Okay, so the guy goes to jail. Very soon, the guy gets released on bail. Now, when the guy gets released on bail, I think his name is Kane Marco. Who's Kane Marco?
Yeah.
Who's Kane Marco in the comics? You know?
He's Sandman.
Okay,
But he was a
wrong
petty
guy.
crook.
Wrong guy. Who is Rhino's name?
Alex I don't know what his name is. It's
Okay.
something long.
So this guy Alex is released, and so there's a limousine out front, and so he gets in the limousine, and we got Norman Osborn in the limousine, and he's driving away, and he's saying that if you want to get back Spider-Man, I can help you, but you'll have to do me a favor. So he drives away, and then soon after, we probably have a scene with Spider-Man in high school, trying to get the girl Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
We set that up, and then as the film goes on, very soon after the next fight scene, this guy starts to this guy basically sets up this amusement park like, but like basically mirrors and all this, and Spider-Man has to has to go through this thing where he has to use his brain to defeat this guy wearing a fishbowl over his head. So he goes through this thing, and he ends up using his brain and outsmarting him, and at the very end he beats him, and he's like, "You've beaten Mysterio, but this is not the last time I'll see you," and he disappears. Okay, so very soon after, this Norman Osborn, and yet again in between these scenes we have some high school scenes. We have setting up the friendship of Harry and Peter. We have some love scene. The traditional scenes you'll see in a movie, and then basically Norman Osborn is saying to these two guys, "Well, alone you guys have brains and bronze, but alone you'll never defeat Spider-Man because he has both. So together you can defeat Spider-Man. So I've given Kane Marco, I've given you all the power you need. Now he looks like Rhino. He looks like a rhino. And Mysterio, here's some tech that will increase your ability to fight Spider-Man." And so then your epic big fight scene in the movie comes. Spider-Man has to put all of his brains and all of his bronze together to defeat them, and he nearly defeats them in the end, of course. And then at the very end of the movie, you see Norman Osborn walking through his laboratory, and he's walking through. You'll probably see like you'll see some throwback things, like you're gonna see the Scorpion suit, and you're gonna see some other things that Spider-Man fans will notice. And then as you're walking through, he stops at this large purple metal thing, while he starts to crack up and just goes and then the movie goes to credits.
The thing about that movie, I think it's a good idea because, we never get really... Well, in the times when we do get, like, a dual villain idea, it's always just like, I just happened to turn into a villain at the exact same time you went crazy, and at the exact same time you got symbiotes. So I like the idea that they were both kind of people that have already existed. It's just that, one person brought them together. Just one question. Why does Norman Osborn hate Spider-Man in your movie?
Probably for a business standpoint reason. Business is not going well because of him. I don't really know exactly, but at this time I'm setting up the fact, like, he's not going to be the villain for number 2. Green Goblin is absolutely not the villain for number 2. I'm just setting up a 3-story arc of, okay, this character will be a villain at the end, but here's 2 movies to set up this character, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest problems with the first one. As much as I like the first one, mostly for, nostalgia and stuff like that, I think that the idea of Norman Osborn just snapping, he was always, kind of arrogant and stuff. But in the movie, you get one scene of normal Norman Osborn, and then boom, he's the Green Goblin, and he flips out. And I never got the character development that I really kind of wanted.
Yeah, and I think, first of all is, I said on my little big thing where I actually talked in detail about what or not in detail, but I talked about an overview of what I wanted to see, and I talked about 9 films stretch story arc because I want them to start actually building stories, and I want them to start doing things on a more global scale, because if they keep rebooting it every 3 movies, we're never going to get to the good stuff.
Yeah, that's true, because I think it was blowing stuff up, dude, or someone who says, the first 3 Spider-Man movies, they didn't have a lot of Spider-Man, because in the first one, he's becoming Spider-Man. By the end, he gets to be Spider-Man. The second one, he quits for half the movie, then he comes back. The third one, he goes evil, flips out, and then at the end, he becomes Spider-Man again. And you never get to get a full movie of just him being Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I think the point is that this film, and ultimately what I wanted to do is, if I ever got to write Spider-Man, I would set it up in actually a 6-story arc. I would basically tell them I want to do 6 movies. Take it or leave it, because I have an idea for at least 6 movies. Now, and basically the 6-movie span would be, every so often I'm setting up certain villains to get to the Sinister Six, because you would at least need 6 films to get there, and if you do 6 films, then you have the 6th film being the Sinister Six, and then you have time to grow it. And the second trilogy would actually introduce the Black Suit, so if we ever did go on to a 3rd trilogy, then you can introduce Venom properly.
Yeah. I think that, again, one of the biggest things about the 3rd movie, I don't hate the 3rd movie as much as other people. I can admit that it's not a good movie, but, I'm willing to watch it without saying, oh, God, it sucks. But I think that one of the biggest things about the movie that really disappointed me was Spider-Man gets the black suit, and he completely just, I don't think he goes crazy, becomes a jerk and everything, the stuff that, a black suit would do to you. And then at the end, we get to see Eddie Brock get it, but we don't get to see similar effects. Really, all that happens is Eddie Brock's arrogance really just gets amplified. And I really want to see kind of a Spider-Man effect where Eddie Brock kind of slowly becomes more and more evil, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. But my biggest problem with Spider-Man 3 was, I think they did Venom, my biggest problem with Venom as a whole, because I have so many problems with that movie, to be honest. I'll enjoy that movie and I can watch it, because it's not, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's a below average movie. It's not bad because the acting isn't bad. The story is rushed. So I don't consider that bad per se. It's not good. I'm not calling it good, but I don't consider it bad, because bad means that your movie usually means that your movie doesn't have redeeming qualities for the most part. And that movie does have redeeming qualities, and I think Venom, the story they did put in Venom was rushed, but it was still Venom's story, and that's one thing I will give the movie props for, is they at least tried to do Venom's story in a film. They didn't do it well because they were rushing it, but at least they got the bullet points correct for the most part.
I think that if that movie was 30 minutes longer, and I'm not saying that because, movies that are too long can be really, annoying, but I think if that movie was 30 minutes longer and you put the 30 minutes in a place that would really be good, like maybe developing Eddie Brock a little more so we can see why he would act like that with the suit, I think the movie would be better.
Well, I had actually heard a lot of things about that movie. I don't know if you heard, but one thing I did hear is that, oh, crud. The guy who plays the bit roles in the movie. I can't think of his name.
What is his name? He was in Evil Dead. What is his name? Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell is actually supposed to play a villain in that movie.
Really?
I heard it from a reliable source, and he was actually supposed to play Mysterio. He was supposed to play a bit role. Basically, Mysterio was going to come, do a quick fight scene, and then Spider-Man was going to beat him.
I think that would have been really fun. Like, just the idea of, in the beginning he says, where do all these villains get this stuff? Which makes me assume that he's faced other villains in between the movies. So that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, and it would kind of like, and if I was writing it, I would have made it where, well, he's always been Mysterio, but the two other films, he's basically been luring Spider-Man into this thing, kind of like that he's basically he's always been this guy. I don't know. I would have connected his two other roles together somehow.
The thing I would do if we're going to bring in Mysterio is wait until the very end, when he's dancing with Mary Jane and everything. Yeah, and, he always flips out and everything. I would have at the very end maybe Mysterio standing over him or, like, watching from the outside and just laughing. So you kind of get that Mysterio's been manipulating him.
Yeah, but getting back to my little plot summary is that you can use multiple villains. You can even use 3 villains. I don't have problems if movies use 3 villains, and they can be 3 villains in a 2-hour span. You just got to use them right, and you got to know what villains to use, and that's the key that Hollywood doesn't understand. Venom is not a multiple villain character. You do not do Venom with another villain. You just don't do them, and especially when you have 2 villains, additional 2 villains, that's the no-no. I mean, the only time you would ever have Venom with another villain is if it was Carnage, just because they go together. But they would bring an entire film together where you don't use Venom. Venom is a standalone character, and there are certain villains you don't use with other villains. I mean, essentially, Batman Begins had one villain, and that was Ra's al Ghul. You can consider and technically it actually had 5 villains, but in all honesty, Ra's al Ghul was the villain of that movie. Everybody else was henchmen.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Scarecrow, you can make an argument that he was in that movie, but to be truthful, Scarecrow, I don't consider him a villain anymore in that movie, because Batman's girlfriend was able to take him out. And unless Batman has a big fight with him, and if you count that big fire thing in the beginning where Scarecrow lights him on fire as a fight, I guess you could kind of, yeah, but I don't consider him part of the big villain.
Well, he's not considered a big villain because he's a henchman. That's all he is. He might be a henchman with a fancy name and a fancy mask, and he might do more than just get ordered around and say get him. But he's a henchman.
Yeah, I mean, I like Scarecrow. I mean, if you see my list, he's my number 3 favorite Batman villain.
Yeah, I noticed that, but I'm just saying that in that movie, like, I think they did his character justice for what his character is, but essentially in that film, he was a henchman, and I mean, they did him good for him being a henchman, but he was a henchman.
Yeah, but